All right, everybody. Again, I'm John Herrick. I gave you a Colts-Jets preview earlier, and now I'm going to give you one for the New Orleans Saints versus the Seattle Seahawks preview, the game that will take place in Seattle this Saturday at 4:30. New Orleans and Seattle couldn't be coming in on two completely different ways into the playoffs. The Seattle Seahawks have been on losers of 7 of their last 8. They've been having all kinds of problems. 7-9, but they are the first team in playoff history to ever make it into the playoffs with a losing record at 7-9. The New Orleans Saints. Earlier in the year, offense looked a little bit out of sync. Wasn't quite sure if they'd be the same team as last year, and they aren't the same team as last year, but they made the playoffs, and they are a wild card team because they were in the same division as the red-hot Atlanta Falcons. Now, the Saints come into this game as a 10.5-point favorite. That is a huge favorite, considering they're going on the road on a short week, playing in Seattle, and they won't have Chris Ivory, who was just put on IR, and they won't have Pierre Thomas, who was also put on IR, and Pierre Thomas was a huge part of their postseason run last year. So we're going to run through some keys to victory for both teams in order for there to be a victory for both teams. First, let's start with the New Orleans Saints. Now, you know that they are definitely going to be struggling to find a running game without Chris Ivory in the game. But here's one thing they're going to have to do. They're going to have to rely on Julius Jones. And you're probably sitting there saying to yourself, well, who's Julius Jones, or where was he? He was the former Cowboy running back. He was a former Seahawk running back. And Reggie Bush is your other guy, but Reggie Bush has kind of proven that he's struggled to run between the tackles. Julius Jones can do that for you, and he's playing against his former team. He's going to be motivated. He wants to help his former team. He wants to help the Saints take down his former team, and he's going to have to run between the tackles and give the Saints an opportunity to win this game and provide some stability on offense. Even though you've got all those great weapons on receiving, like Marcus Colston and Lance Moore and Devery Henderson and Robert Meacham, you've got to find a way to run the ball, or at least impose a threat of the run. The next thing you got to do if you're the Saints is blitz like crazy. It's been their method of success the last couple of years. Greg Williams has been absolutely terrific. He's found a way to get pressure on opposing quarterbacks. You don't know who's going to start. It could be Charlie Whitehurst. It could be Matt Hasselbeck. It could be both. They might start both of them. Pete Carroll's being very ambiguous about it in practice all week. But if you're going to win this game, put pressure on the quarterback, and not even if you don't sack him, knock him down. Put pressure on him. Get him on the ground. Don't let him, hurry him. Make him have to run out of the pocket. Just find a way to put pressure on them and force him to have to go back to his running game. Otherwise, you're not going to win the game. Especially, and if you blitz like crazy, you might take that crazy home crowd out of the game. The next thing I'm going to say, the third key to victory is Thomas Morstead cannot be Kevin Dodge. And what do I mean by that? Kevin Dodge is the New York Giants punter that was stupid enough to punt the football to Deshaun Jackson and allow Deshaun Jackson to run back for a touchdown and give the Eagles a 7-point victory, 28 unanswered to beat the Giants. Remember how furious Tom Coughlin was at Kevin Dodge? Thomas Morstead, Saints punter. Do not punt the ball to Leon Washington. He is an electric return man for the Seattle Seahawks. Just ask the San Diego Chargers. He returned 2 of them earlier in the year. Do not let Leon Washington get the ball out in space. And you probably can't avoid kicking it to him on kickoffs, but you can avoid punting it to him. So do not punt him the ball, kick it out of bounds, and find a way to make something happen there. Take him out of the game. Now, in regards to that, let's look at the Seahawks. If the Seahawks are going to win this game, here's what they're going to have to do. First thing, pick a quarterback and stick with him, Pete Carroll. You can't just sit there the whole time and go with, we'll use Charlie Whitehurst. We may use Matt Hasselbeck. He's being very ambiguous. But let me just tell you, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you really don't have any. It's never worked. The Arizona Cardinals tried it a couple of years ago with Kurt Warner and Matt Leinart. It was a disaster. It doesn't work. Matt Hasselbeck's been banged up with his ribs being hurt. His wrist has been a problem as well. There have been all kinds of injuries to Matt Hasselbeck, but he's been fantastic in the postseason at Qwest Field, and the Saints have yet to win a road playoff game. So that's going to be interesting to see how they do that. But I definitely think if you're going to win, pick a quarterback and stick with him. Charlie Whitehurst played well in the regular season finale against the Rams, so maybe go with him if Hasselbeck's not 100% healthy, although he's confident that Hasselbeck is going to go. Either way, whoever you pick with, you got to stick with him throughout the whole game because it's hard to build continuity when you're calling plays and you've got 2 different quarterbacks flying in and out of the huddle. It doesn't work. Next thing you got to do, special teams, they've got to be really special. Look, Seattle, The only way they're going to win this football game is if they have something big happen on special teams to help out. So they're going to need a kick return from Leon Washington. They're going to have to block a Garrett Hartley field goal, block a Thomas Morstead punt, return it for a touchdown. Something nuts is going to have to happen on special teams if Seattle's going to win this game. Because if they try to go stride for stride, Whitehurst or Hasselbeck against Drew Brees, it ain't going to work. They're going to need some help in the return game, the kicking game, getting a kick or a punt return for a touchdown. Something's got to happen in that regard. That's the only way they're going to win this football game. They're going to have to get a big play out of that, out of one of their special teamers, whether it's a kick return, block kick, block punt, kickoff, or punt return for a TD. Next thing, Marshawn Lynch. You got to crack the century mark in this game. You got to get 100 yards. You got to get 25 carries. If you're going to beat the Saints, I'll get their name right eventually. If you're going to beat the New Orleans Saints, you got to find a way to establish balance on offense and take pressure off of whichever quarterback is in the game. Because if you don't do that, you're gonna make things a lot more difficult on yourself. The more you drop back to pass, the more Greg Williams, the defensive coordinator for the Saints, is going to send that pressure. You've got to find a way to run the football with Marshawn Lynch. Seattle is ranked dead last in rushing offense, only getting about 89 rushing yards a game. And I live in Indianapolis, and I've watched the Colts not be able to run the ball very well, but Seattle has been a disaster. Now, they were pretty good against the Rams last week, but I got to tell you what, if they're going to win this game, Marshawn Lynch is going to have to crack the century mark and give them a lift. Also, that home crowd has got to stay in it. The Saints have got to get off to a quick start and get them out of the game, get that home crowd out of the game. Otherwise, it's going to be very, very tough to win. Final prediction. I am a little worried about the Seahawks, the Saints having to go to Seattle on a short week. No Chris Ivory, no Pierre Thomas. Running game is going to be difficult to find. I think Julius Jones will be a little bit effective. I think he'll be able to provide the threat of a run. And I'm going to go with Drew Brees. Drew Brees is a top 5 quarterback. I mean, in this kind of a situation, they know what they're getting themselves into, and I think their defense is playing well at the right time. The Saints are, and I don't think the Saints are a Super Bowl team, but I don't see them losing to a 7-9 team in the playoffs. I still think I wouldn't be totally surprised if the Seahawks won, but I definitely think the Saints are a 10.5-point favorite for a reason, and I'm going to go with the Saints over the Seattle Seahawks 23-10. I think the Seahawks are going to struggle to score points in this game, especially against that pressure defense of the Saints. That's your Seattle Seahawks versus New Orleans Saints playoff preview. Packers and Eagles, that one's coming up. We just took care of the Saturday games. I'm going to get to the Sunday games coming up next.